Ladies and gentlemen, please now welcome Sean Burton, President of the Los Angeles World Airports Board of Commissioners.
Hi, good morning, everybody. It's great to see you here. It's great to be here with my good friend, Scott Kirby from United Airlines. And I want to first thank Mary Leslie and LABC for hosting a summit on sustainability. The LABC has been a leader for a long time on issues that face Los Angeles, whether it's our housing crisis or sustainability. And always, Mary and the team always put together a very substantive conversation. So it's really an honor to be here today. I'd like to say just a couple words about Scott. Scott is the new CEO of United Airlines. He served as president of the firm from 2016 to 2020, running all of its operations, marketing, sales, et cetera. Prior to that, he was the president of American Airlines and US Airways before that. So he's a true industry veteran. I'm very fortunate to have him here this morning. A couple things I'd like to say just about the perspective of what we've been facing in this industry over the last year and a half. And I'll give you the kind of very quick LAX perspective. When the downturn first hit in March and April of last year, we had a dramatic drop in traffic. And I asked Justin Urbacci and the team at LABC to go back and look at previous downturns and what the greatest impact had been. And it had been after September 11th. Traffic had dropped 47% from August of 2001 to September of 2001. And I often ask people, do you know how long it took us to recover and to get back to August 2001 levels? It took 14 years. It took 14 years to get back to that level. In April of last year, we dropped 95%. That's how impactful COVID was on the travel industry and airports. It hurt our airline partners. It hurt our concessionaires. It was very difficult on our employees and our team. And I just want to really commend Justin Urbacci, who I think is the best CEO of any airport in the country. We are lucky to have him. He worked night and day with the team to get LAX back on its feet. And we've had a very positive year. In fact, over Memorial Day weekend, we hit 80,000 passengers. So we're back up. We're still down 59%, but we've come a long way. So, I thought it'd be helpful just to start before we get into sustainability to just ask you, Scott, give us a sense of what the last 18 months has been like for you and your team at United.
Well, thanks for having me here, Sean. You described it pretty accurately. The most difficult, challenging, traumatic year and a half in the history of aviation. But it's turned into a time to transform United Airlines in a lot of ways that were really good. A year ago, when revenues were down 99%, and we had no idea how long this was going to take. In March of last year, we were burning $100 million a day of cash. But we took all the steps that we had to get through the crisis. Kudos to to Washington, D.C., a bipartisan effort for the whole economy, but saving aviation as part of that. That was also important because it gave us the time to go off and raise private financing. We raised about $30 billion of debt as we went through the crisis. So we got a lot of money to pay back. But we've made it through, and we can now see the light at the end of the tunnel. And when I say it's been transformative at United, it really has been. I've taken to saying we made a decade's worth of progress in a single year. A number of things that are important about the efficiency of running the airline, health and safety. But I think the thing that everyone on this call and that our customers are going to notice the most, it really is a change in the service levels and the customer service culture. This is something we were going to try to do before. But I think to some degree, the shock of flying airplanes at the beginning from Los Angeles to New York, and there were 2 people on board or 3 people, and they were either doctors or nurses who were flying into the New York, New Jersey region to help with when that was the first hotspot in the country. The shock of that, made it impossible for anyone to take for granted the importance of our customers and who pays the bill. The pride, as we went through it, of being part of the humanitarian response early on, and the hundreds of tons of goods that we carried back, and crews flying into China when they didn't know if they were putting their own lives at risk to do it, but knowing that they needed to bring back ventilators and PPE and all the other equipment. And as most recently as India, the only U.S. airline flying to India. That's created a lot of pride, but it's also really changed the customer service culture. We probably won't have time today to talk about everything we've done for the customer. But as much as anything, I think that's what's going to be the difference. And it's allowed us also to increase the focus, ironically, on longer term issues like what we're going to talk about today, both diversity and sustainability.
That's very helpful. And I didn't know you would fly to India. That could be helpful from Los Angeles.
Yes, he can. My guess is the mayor will be wanting to fly on us.
I'm going to make a note on that. That's good. What's your outlook for the next, just on the industry generally, on the next 6 to 12 to 24 months, both in personal travel, but also in business travel, which drives a lot of profitability for the airlines?
So you can think of United's business as roughly 1/3 domestic leisure business, 1/3 domestic business travel, and 1/3 long haul international. That domestic leisure business is already back at more than 100%. I mean, the pent-up demand understates it. The desire to reconnect, to unite with other people, to see your family again. The Kirby family has certainly been doing it. It's liberating, and I think truthfully you appreciate it even more. And we see that at more than 100%. Business travel is starting to inch back, but it's still probably down, call it 70% right now. My guess is that business travel starts to return. There's an inflection point after Labor Day because schools will be back. Lots of businesses are going to have people back in the office. United is like a mini that, because it's been so uncertain, we let people get through the summer and then people will be back in the office and the business travel will start to come back. I'll spare you my longer speech, but I've been on record really since April of last year with a view that business travel will come back 100%, not immediately, but 100%, because it's about human relationships. And I've been traveling for business every week, and it is not the same trying to do this on a Zoom call versus being there in person. So we do think it comes back 100%. And then long haul international is just waiting for the borders to open. We're working hard as an industry right now to get the US, UK open. The science, the data seem pretty clear that that's a safe place to open up. But getting, we've had the ball on the 1 yard line, I've been saying for about a month. Getting it into the end zone is a little harder than I would have expected. But we see huge, just this week, just the conversation about the borders may be open. Our bookings are going through the roof to Europe. People just booking, hoping it's going to be open. So we're really confident on the ultimate recovery. Exact timing TBD, but we're feeling much better now than we were at this time last year. For sure.
You mentioned on our call earlier that you were in Washington D.C. this week. People were having in-person meetings. You had to wear a tie.
Yeah.
But things are starting to get back to normal.
Yeah, they really are. And it was great being there in person and seeing people. And everyone that I met with essentially is somebody that I had Zoom calls or Teams meetings with going through the crisis. And it's not the same, especially the events, the going to dinner, going to reception. We were with one of the senators who, it was her first event, and she kudos to her. She made it out from the bipartisan Senate negotiations to our event, but the first one, and she said it's liberating to get out and see people, and once you do it once, then you're really ready to go.
Right. You remember what it was like.
Yeah.
Look, let's talk about sustainability. So this obviously is a major priority here in Los Angeles. We are blessed to have a mayor, Eric Garcetti, who has been environmentalist and focused on climate change since well before it's popular. In fact, we did a opening last week of a new terminal, and I told the story, which is when I first met the mayor. It was actually before he was in politics, even before the city council, and he had one of those little RAV4 electric vehicles. This was 20 years ago, and we used to have to pick a place to go to dinner that was close because it only had a 40-mile radius. He's been passionate about this since day one, and he's laid out this visionary Green New Deal for Los Angeles. This has been a priority for LAX for a long time, from the prior mayor, and we really ramped it up, I think, with this mayor and our board. And we're committed to be 100% renewable by 2045. We're very focused on potable water. As we buy all of our fleets, everything is clean energy. It's been a real passion of ours, and you've been a great partner in that, in your airline. And I know that sustainability, you've laid out some very bold goals and really been a leader in the industry and doing things. So just talk a little bit about the sustainability vision for United.
Yeah. Well, like the mayor, sustainability, particularly climate change, has been a personal passion of mine since I was in college. The science on it is fascinating. It is the biggest issue facing our generation. And for a long time, we've known about these potential tipping points that really have positive feedback loops that once you cross them, it's really, really hard to go backwards. It's not gradually going from 1.5 degree to 1.5 degree to 2 degrees Celsius. You hit one of these tipping points and things snap up like that and have catastrophic consequences. So we simply have to solve it. At United, what we're focused on and what I'm personally interested in is real solutions. And far too often in corporate America, in my view, sustainability is about marketing. I look at some places that report the sustainability group reports to the chief marketing officer. And it's about marketing and it's not about real solutions. And, real solutions there are parts of the economy, not just aviation, but steel, concrete, agriculture, that are going to be hard to decarbonize completely. So what can we do? In aviation, sustainable aviation fuel is one of the big 3 elements for us. We represent about half of the world's total commitment to sustainable aviation fuel. We're working hard. That's a lot of what I was doing on the Hill in the last few days on how government support can help build that industry up. We're investing in it as well. A second pillar for us is technology. We're the first airline to make an investment and a purchase order for electric aircraft. And then the third, and I think the most important, is carbon sequestration. And we've made a commitment to get to 100% green, which is different than what everyone else says with net zero. And our commitment is to get there without using carbon offsets. And I think we'll talk about it more extensively. So I'll leave you I'll wait for my speech on that. I get fired up thinking about it though. Look, we cannot solve this problem as a globe by using carbon offsets. We cannot do it. The math doesn't work. And the only way the math is going to work, as far as I can see it today, is with carbon sequestration. So that's the third big element for us.
So let's start with that one first, because I learned a lot, about this from our conversations and discussions. I do think it is really a differentiator. You read a lot about firms that say we're going to be carbon neutral, and we're planting, 10,000 trees, here, and that's going to offset what you do. But you have a different perspective on how realistic that is and how valuable it is. So talk about that in more detail.
Yeah. Well, first, the carbon offset programs are almost always about planting trees. And the truth of the matter is almost all of them are not real. They aren't doing anything new. There's a recent program that's been in the Wall Street Journal. There's been 2 articles about it. But if you went back 2 months ago, there was a story in the journal about timber prices in the southeast of the United States are at all-time historic lows because they closed a bunch of timber mills during COVID, despite lumber prices being high. Timber owners saying, we have to wait a couple of years and hope timber prices go up before we cut our trees down, or it will cost us more to ship them to the mill. 3 weeks later, carbon offset program. They're going to pay timber farmers in the southeast to not cut their trees for a year. They're still going to cut the trees next year. And they weren't going to cut the trees anyway. But big companies, are taking credit and saying we're 100% net zero for something that did nothing. But even bigger than that point, which infuriates me when things like that happen, but even bigger than that point is even if the programs are real, mankind produces 4,000 times as many emissions as we did in the pre-industrial era. There is not room on the planet to plant 4,000 times as many trees. Real carbon offset programs of planting trees cannot even be a rounding error in making a difference in the over 50 gigatons of carbon that we put into the atmosphere every year. And as long as every company, and almost every company, uses carbon offsets in order to have a marketing message of net zero, we will never solve the problem. And it's actually in a way worse than doing nothing. Because when you do that, people that actually care and haven't taken the time to educate themselves, they can check the box and say, I did my part and move on, when they really haven't made a difference. And so we have got to get to a world where we do real programs that make a real difference. And carbon sequestration, which is taking carbon from some source directly out of the atmosphere, pumping it underground where it's stored for tens of millions of years, I think is the most important.
And how do you do that? You invest in plants that do that? How do you make good on the carbon sequestration commitment?
Yeah. So the technology exists today. We're a partner with Occidental, is the lead on it, and of course is doing all the engineering. Occidental in 1.5, what'll be the world's largest carbon sequestration plant. It will sequester enough carbon each year to be the equivalent of planting 40 million trees, except it'll be permanent, real and permanent. Now, today, the economics are hard to make work. But, wind and solar 20 to 30 years ago were uneconomic. And people, if you'd had this conversation about wind and solar 20 to 30 years ago, everyone would have said, it's going to require government support and it's too expensive, we can never do it. Today, it's cheaper to produce a megawatt of electricity with wind and solar almost everywhere in the world, certainly here in the United States, than it is from coal or nat gas. And the same thing can happen with both carbon sequestration and sustainable fuels. But we've got to start the investment process to drive the economies of scale, drive down that cost curve for this to be a real solution.
So you're focused on really solving the problem as opposed to, right, which is rare.
So yeah, to me, this is not about marketing. This is about, and I had a couple of debates with some of my industry competitors, like, well, that's going to be more expensive. And I said, it's going to be more expensive in the short term, but doing the right thing in the long term, well, one, it's just the right thing, that should be enough. But I think in the long term, it's probably less expensive too.
Yeah. So, but you bring up a good point. I mean, you run a business, right? You run a public company, you have shareholders. Wall Street is not always known for thinking about the long-term consequences of their actions. People are focused on quarterly results. So how do you have those discussions with the analysts and the major shareholders about, why United should be using cash on its balance sheet to invest in these technologies? Like how do those conversations go?
Yeah, I mean, the truth is most people don't push back too much because once they see how passionate I am about it, they don't feel like having a debate. But I do. Look, it's simple to me, and we use this a lot. We're using it increasingly with our frontline employees on what they do with customers, which is just do the right thing. I mean, we make life way too complicated in corporate America and politics everywhere. Like, if it's the right thing, just do it and get on with it, and things tend to work out. But that's essentially what we say, and I do say, like, I do think in the long term, it's what's best for business because this is going to happen. Like, there's going to be a combination of sticks and carrots that force us to decarbonize and force us to do real things. Because if we don't, the results are going to be catastrophic. And because of that, I am confident it's the right long-term business decision. And I don't mind taking a few arrows in the short term over doing the right thing because I'm confident we'll be proven right in the long term.
Well, look, and it is, right. Consciousness has been raised, right, on this over the last couple of decades, but particularly in the last couple of years. I mean, I have a 19-year-old daughter who's a vegan, not for health reasons, because she's very passionate about climate change. And from her perspective, she's not going to wait, for a bunch of people in Washington to figure this out. She's going to do her piece.
Yeah.
Right? How could she?
Good for her.
Right. And so that's the power of millennials, right? People sometimes say they're self-centered or they're focused on their own issues, but they also are passionate about what they can do. But talk a little bit also about, the sustainability of your fuel, because that's obviously a really important part of this solution. And it's something that is not going to take 20 years to do. You can do immediately. So why did you, make this decision in 2016 to kind of lead the industry and start using that? And how's that going to look going forward?
Yeah. So sustainable aviation fuel, it's not just aviation fuel. It could be biodiesel as well, as an example. We have all kinds of feedstock that can be used to create fuels for high density needs, things like airplanes, that you can't fully replace with hydrogen or electric. But what's important about this is to use feedstocks that are not farmland. So we should not be growing corn, palm oil, soybeans, and turning those into fuel because there's all kinds of other negative environmental effects from those. But instead, using what we do, our partner World Energy, which is there in the LA suburbs, that uses cooking oils. We have another partner, Fulcrum, which is based in Reno, who is building plants that take municipal solid waste, extract the carbon material from the waste before it goes to the landfill, turns it into fuel. And oh, by the way, the landfill also big methane leaks, and methane is 120 something times more potent than carbon dioxide. Eliminates or reduces methane leaks from landfills. But because these sources of feedstock are more diverse than an oil field, they require more investment to get them to economic. And so we weren't a partner, but we supported. We were involved in the launch. There's a bill in the House for fuel credits for sustainable aviation fuel. I hope it's going to be introduced soon in the Senate. I'd love to have something in the infrastructure bill. The partisan nature of that, sort of make some of these things hard. But there's broad support. There's broad bipartisan support for this industry to do the same kind of thing that we did so successfully with wind and solar power. And it's a source of jobs, source of technology here in the country. And so we're focused on trying to help make that happen.
So you sound optimistic on that point. And obviously you were just in Washington, and I won't ask you obviously to weigh in on anything specific politically. I won't do that to you, but climate change has become politicized, right, to some degree, unfortunately. And when you're in Washington and you're having these meetings, are people open on both sides of the aisle to solutions that can work for everybody?
They are, and I'll make 2 points about it. One, people on both sides of the aisle are open and want to get something done, especially in private conversations, want to find real solutions. That's really, really encouraging. The hurdles to me are twofold. One, sadly, we've gotten into this world where if the other side is for it, then I'm against it. I don't even need to know what the issue is. We've got to get away from that. I like telling the story. I read in the National Geographic a couple of months ago an article on the 50th anniversary of the Clean Air Act. The background behind you looks much different than it did 50 years ago, thanks to the Clean Air Act. All of you in Los Angeles know what it meant. Saved tens of thousands of lives. But in this whole, 10-page article in the National Geographic, the most important line to me was kind of a throwaway line, which it passed in 1970 with a unanimous vote in the Senate and one no vote in the House. 1970, civil rights era, Vietnam War, not exactly a time of cohesion. We need to do that again. And the second challenge we have on climate change is there are people on one side of the debate that are sort of dogmatic, I'll use the word dogmatic, about we can't ever, anything produces emissions is bad. Everything with oil, zero. Right. We're not going to be able to keep the lights on if we do that. And the flip side, is, well, the economic cost is too big, so let's do nothing. I think there's 80% in the middle, that there's a solution that 80% of us believe in and get on board with, that gets us on the road, that actually gets to real results. And so finding a way to, get that 80% to put something forward that they can all support is the challenge. But there's bipartisan support. There are people on both sides of the aisle who understand this and want to do something to make a difference.
That's really encouraging. We don't hear a lot of encouraging things coming out of Washington, so more so lately. But so let me ask you this. I'm fortunate to talk to a lot of CEOs, both in this industry and otherwise. You seem particularly passionate about climate change and sustainability. It's clearly not just marketing to you. Give us a sense as to why that is. Like, when did you develop this passion, and why are you so passionate about it?
Well, it started in college, and it probably at its core is because I'm a nerd, and I spend about 3 hours a day reading on average stuff that has nothing to do with my job, and I've done that for as long as I can remember. And I can remember first starting to read about climate change, at least in college. And what was fascinating, there were all these theories, and particularly about these tipping points. And the one I remember first was the Gulf Stream, which the Gulf Stream, goes up the east coast of the United States across, and it's what keeps Northern Europe warm. 10,000 years ago, Europe was under a sheet of ice, glaciers across the continent, and essentially almost uninhabitable, much of it uninhabitable because of that. At that point in time, the Gulf Stream went straight from Florida across to North Africa. If the Gulf Stream did that again, Europe, could go back into an ice age, ironically, because of climate change. And what's fascinating, though, is as the glaciers melt in Greenland, which more fresh water stored in Greenland than the rest of the planet combined, it changes the salinity of the North Atlantic. And there's a lot of theories and certainly evidence that that's what causes the Gulf Stream to periodically move north and south. So you could have this point where the Gulf Stream flips almost overnight, and dramatic change in Europe. Things like that, it's just interesting, is what first got me interested, because it's just like, that's fascinating. Something like that can happen. And then you start to understand what it means to society, what it means to people. And there's all kinds of tips, like Los Angeles, dependent on rain in Colorado coming through the Colorado River for water. A lot of climate models say with climate change, not going to get nearly as much rain on the western slope in the Rockies. Just catastrophic impacts. And that's what got me interested in then realizing that this is the issue that our generation has to solve. I have 7 kids. I don't want to, I won't be able to look them in the eye if I didn't try to make a difference.
Well, look, it's great to see genuine passion and from your perch, United Airline and your industry leadership and the kind of megaphone that you have, you can make a real impact. And so,
well, that's actually a lot of what I'm trying to do too. Is one of the things I've realized is United, when something bad happens, we're on Good Morning America and on the front page of the newspaper, we're high profile.
Right.
But the flip side is true as well. It gives us a chance to use that to make a difference that's bigger than just United, to actually make a larger difference. And so that's really our goal.
That's good. So a couple more things I'd love to cover while we still have, I think we have about 5 minutes left. The first is on diversity and inclusion.
Yeah.
This has been a major initiative as well for United for a long time, kind of since, it's become obviously more popular recently and more people are talking about it, but you've been doing it for a long time. You have your Aviate Academy. Will you talk a little bit about, one, why that's important to you, and 2, what specifically you're doing?
Yeah, well, it's another one that fits into it's just the right thing to do. And to me, diversity and equity and inclusion are about creating equal opportunity. And, we are a country built on equality, a principle of equality. But we need to give people equal opportunity. And the reality is that we don't all grow up with equal opportunity and equal chances to succeed in life. And so we're trying to make a real difference on that. We have a lot of programs at headquarters, a group called Year Up, which I would encourage all of you to look into for great intern young leader program. But the one that I think is the highest profile is the Aviate Academy. But today, only 19% of our pilots are women or people of color. That means that 81% of our pilots are white males. And the historic reason for that, and by the way, our diversity is higher, I think, than any other airline in the United States. The reason is because to be a pilot, you've either got to go through the military, and mostly been white men that became pilots in the military, or your parents have to spend up to $150,000 on getting you certified in enough hours so that you can start on the career path. So you've got to come from a pretty well-off family if you're going to have a chance to be a pilot. And so what we've done is create an academy where we're going to find the best people. We're going to let them get that first set of training. They're going to have to get all the same training, certification, standard requirements, safety that anyone has, and they won't all make it through. But we're going to give people the opportunity to go to that training and have half of the classes devoted to women and people of color. And we now can say with confidence that we're going to get the Aviate Academy is going to be able to be more selective than any Ivy League school or than Stanford because of the number of applications. But we're hoping to train at least 500 pilots a year. And that's something that'll make a real difference. It's time for those of us in corporate America to stop putting out nice corporate talk and actually take action. Talk without action is really frustrating and doesn't make a difference.
That's great. It's really refreshing. And obviously those aviators will become role models and they'll be able to help their children and others. So it has an incredible effect.
Well, we're partnered with a group called Tuskegee Next in Chicago that goes South Loop and West Side. And their point, which I love, is, this is, our wide body captains, by the way, make about $400,000 a year on average, a little over. Really good jobs. That's not only transformation to them and their families, but if you've grown up, on the South Side of Chicago and you've got the opportunity to do this, that's the kind of person that's going to come and give back to the community. That's how we're going to make it. Creating economic opportunity for people is how we solve the problem in the long term. So that's what we're focused on.
That's a wonderful program. Okay, we just got a couple minutes left, and as an aviation buff and as someone who's in the military, you have new supersonic aircraft, Mach 1.7, right?
Yeah.
So tell us about that, what it means, when it's going to launch, how much time is it going to save people?
Yeah. Well, we're excited about it. Excited about it because this is the new United Airlines, innovating, leading the way, whether it's on sustainability, diversity, health and safety as we went through the crisis, but also returning supersonic aviation to the commercial skies. We've got a great partner in Boom, though I told their CEO, he's not a very good marketer. That's a bad name for an aircraft company, aircraft manufacturing company. But nonetheless, the technology is real and great partner. It's a ways away. I mean, we don't expect the airplane to fly in commercial service until 2029. But the point of it is, by getting started early, not only will we have a better product for our customers to get from New York to London in 3.5 hours, or cut the time in half to go from San Francisco to Tokyo, but we will also be able to, be involved in the development of the technology, what it looks like, have a say instead of just waiting until it's done and say, oh, we should have done X, Y, Z. We get to have a say in how it's developed. That's the same thing we're doing with Archer Aviation as well for electric aircraft, being involved from the ground floor, from the beginnings, to really have an influence.
Great. Well, Scott, really appreciate you being here today. It's an honor to have a discussion. We appreciate everything you do in the industry. At LAX, we appreciate your partnership that you've had with us and your passion for this industry. And thank you very much. We'll see you soon.
Thank you, Sean. Look forward to seeing you in person.
Okay, you too. All right. Bye-bye.